in Orange County, California. As true experts in the field of risk mitigation, investigation, and business protection, Santoni Investigations is committed to helping clients during the most crucial moments they need assistance and guidance. They've helped attorneys and businesses for over 20 years, and their work isn't stopping anytime soon. That's why I've invited CEO Tim Santoni to join us and share more about his firm. If you'd like to learn more about my firm, which is Critical Mass Radio Show, this podcast here, and the CEO peer groups that I lead, please visit my company's website, criticalmass4for business.com. It's great pleasure to welcome Tim Santoni to the show. Tim, welcome to Critical Mass Radio Show and Podcast.
Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure. Let's start real simply. Maybe you could tell us, I gave an intro about your firm, but what makes Santoni Investigations unique in your space? What do you do, and what makes you unique?
Sure. As an investigation firm, we typically get involved after the fraud, the embezzlement, the theft, the counterfeiting. But we really understand the business drivers that contribute to those things. So we really pride ourselves on alleviating those awful situations and then also giving guidance and consulting with clients to help mitigate risk in the future. And I would say that one of the things that sets us apart is probably, while we're locally based, our reach is really national with partners globally. And in a global economy, we have clients that come to us that have issues throughout the world, and allows us to give them access very quickly in situations where they can't wait.
Right. Your firm's been in business for 20 plus years, so you've built a reputation, I would assume, a positive reputation in the field. Can you give my audience of CEOs and business owners maybe a sense for why somebody might call you?
Yeah, so it's a great question. So businesses typically call us when they have issues with their employees and their supply chain. So their employees may be stealing from them physically or virtually. They may have issues with their supply chain, diversion, or issues with people delivering either product or funds, resources. Or maybe they are dealing with claims of maybe workers' compensation fraud or issues in the business. And that's the bad news. Other times they're coming to us to get good business intel on potentially an acquisition target, or maybe an adversary they're thinking about pursuing, or maybe to track down and get insight into executives they may want to bring on board that are part of another company. So variety of intelligence gathering and discrete information that help them make really informed business decisions and hopefully mitigate risk if and when it arises.
Right. And that term discrete is really critical, isn't it? Because you can't be leaving a big footprint everywhere you go, right?
Yeah, that's the number one question we get is anyone going to find out about this? And the short answer is no. I mean, our job is to do our work discreetly, effectively, confidentially, protecting our clients' identity as well as protecting the people that, as we investigate those that are close to them, whether it's a relative, spouse, partner, business owner, or potential business partner, leaving no trace.
So has technology made your business, your job, easier or harder?
That's a tough question, Richard. In some ways, it's made it easier. In some ways, made it harder, just because the fact that it's a lot easier for people to trace digital footprint currently at a novice level. But for technologies allow us to really have access to a lot more data a lot more quickly. Which is just causing us to have to parse through and review and confirm because there's just so much more out there. But there's definitely some technological advances that have helped us. And with those come privacy concerns and other things. So it's a double-edged sword. We have some restrictions in terms of data and information as a result of that because people are concerned about how and where their information is sitting, and how we would access it.
Boy, if we had more time, I'm sure there are members of my audience that would love me to ask you, like, what's one of the most interesting examples of some of the work you did. But we won't be able to get to that right now because I have other questions I want to get to, which is, I said that you help businesses and attorneys, but maybe you can give us a sense for the niche or niches that Santoni Investigations is focused on.
Sure. So, Rich, we'll break that into two segments. So on the pre-employment background screening side, really compliant industries, IT, healthcare, finance, and construction are key clients for us in those segments on background checks because compliance drives their world as well as risk. Elevated workers' comp claims and other injuries and risk, and so they're more inclined to be more careful in their hiring processes. The businesses on the investigation side that really examples would be large commercial carriers, workers' comp carriers, and the law firms and legal community that support them. And because most of the cases that we're dealing with, we're working through a law firm or an attorney in some way, shape, or form.
Okay, so that's the mention of the attorneys is they're actually coming to you to do something they don't do in-house that you're experts in.
They're outsourcing it to us to keep it privileged and confidential, a resource on the ground, and we are an uninterested third party, so we can file a declaration or give testimony that they can't.
Okay.
And attorneys can't give declarations or depots in their own cases while they might like to. They need somebody else. And also businesses, to that point, a lot of times businesses are very entrepreneurial and they want to do things themselves, like make an undercover buy of a product or service. They want to investigate things. The problem becomes when that information needs to become evidence in a court of law, they're conflicted out. That information cannot be submitted through a declaration, or they cannot be deposed because they're very much involved or party to that action in many cases.
So, help me to understand, what is it about this industry that interested you or interests you?
Yeah, so I always wanted to be a business owner. I think what intrigues me about this business are the nuances between the practical business applications of what clients deal with and the legal implications, and how the legal system is always kind of trailing technology and business.
Right, it is.
And so while fraudsters and the people in the black market capitalize on those things, the challenge is always to come up with solutions to help the clients, quote unquote, the good guys, come up with solutions to deal with those in a legal and admissible way, and fight those people off. And so that's the constant divide we have between technology and business that's always advancing. And typically our legal system and our laws and enforcement mechanisms are always trailing, and that's always the challenge.
Yeah, they are always challenged because they have to catch up through precedent and figuring it out through law cases. And it's by the very nature of the way it's constructed. Okay.
Exactly.
So I know that your firm quite successfully leverages the use of content to promote your brand, and I would assume attract clients. You have a solid presence on all the major social sites that I've checked out, and you even have your own channel, right? And on YouTube. And I'm wondering if you could explain, as a business owner to other business owners who might be listening today or in the future as a podcast, your strategy and the results you've gotten from creating content designed to educate and inform.
Yeah, so we've really taken devoted a lot of time and resources to creating content on different platforms. And I wouldn't say that we're perfect in any way, but we try to be cross-content and very cross-platform and very active. And my goal was to inform. So I wanted to dispel the myths of the typical private investigator, to give credibility to the industry, to build it up through education, information, and with our clients and peers and other folks. And also, I think that we sell an intangible service, so they're buying us. So the only way for our clients to really understand who we are and what we are is to put pictures and video and words behind those things to illustrate what we do.
Right.
And so video is a great, platform for that. It's a great medium. And so we consistently strive to come up with content ideas, usually driven from the typical questions that our clients ask. And a lot of times in our space, what we find is that clients are afraid to ask those questions about things we deal with because they're not really fun topics.
Yeah.
Those bad things that are happening in business, or how they're being taken advantage of, or a situation that they don't want to become public. And so we're trying to remove those barriers and make them feel like, oh yeah, there's other resources to answer those questions, and really becoming educators, because I think that's where you can really grow influence and expertise, is by sharing what you know.
Right.
And those secrets that we used to hold deep inside our offices or between our ears, really working to expose those, because we know that, hey, there's people out there going to try and do it on their own, so we might as well give them some tools and resources. And
how long have you made the commitment to build this content? Can you give me a sense for how long you've been at this, Tim?
It's funny. I just looked up today, our first video on our YouTube channel and our first posts on different platforms, and it's weird when you look back, but I would say it's taken probably 5 or 6 years to get where we are now.
Okay.
Through in-house efforts, using outside firms, but really to get to a point where in the last 12 to 18 months, we've had a consistent, concerted effort on a daily or weekly basis delivering content. Before that was more sporadic, but we definitely, were dabbling at it for quite some time. And
would you suggest this is a good endeavor for other CEOs and business owners to undertake?
Yeah, it's interesting, because my belief is yes. There's a lot of pushback, but really the challenge that you face is that a lot of business owners are curious as to how do you measure ROI? How do you measure what you're getting from all this time and resources that go into all this?
Right. Fair question.
Yeah, and it's in a service-related business, it's hard to measure that, right? What your influence, impact, and how that's converting, right? But I think that what business owners need to understand is that if you want to build a brand and a business around people, those people need to have a voice, and they need to talk, and they need to interact on these platforms. So just having content out there isn't enough. You have to interact and engage. So LinkedIn by itself is not going to bring you business.
Right.
Putting content on LinkedIn is not going to bring you business. But interacting on that platform, if your potential clients and referral partners are there, is going to bring you business. So I have clients that have my email address, my cell phone, but they'll send me a message on LinkedIn saying, "Can you help me with this?" Because it's top of mind for them at that moment.
Right.
So you need to be where they are when they're there so that they can. If your clients are on Facebook, same thing. So I would say it helps in that regard, and also to visibility in terms of, I would say the biggest things the unexpected things that I found, recruiting is a lot easier because people can see who you are and what I'm about through those videos. They know what I stand for, which surprising they actually watch, but people that want a job will pay attention to those and come into interviews already knowing. Partners, vendors, people in the industry. I've been to trade shows and gone to booths, and people come up to me and say, "Oh, I've seen your videos." And I'm shocked.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah. And it creates a conversation, a level of trust to grow your network, your audience, your business, because there's always already a foundation for it. Kind of like what you do with the show, spreading the word. People inherently know that they would trust you and the people that come on your show because you're letting them speak and talk about what it is they're good at, and there's some level of understanding and some level of trust built when there's some common ground.
So I'm all about peer learning, and so I'm going to ask you another question in this area. Would you suggest to the business owner that they personally be involved as you are with the effort around the social media and the content creation?
Yes. So everyone's different. Some people are better with writing. Some people are better on video. But I think that it's important for business owners to have some sort of effort in that process.
Okay.
Because it's going to help to elevate. If they are the company or they are the brand, it will definitely help. But it also is going to provoke them to ask questions of their team and their people as to what they're hearing and speak to those things. But also, this is where we're headed. You have content generation at scale and all these things that if they're involved, people that are helping on your marketing team, if they get 1 hour with you a week in a podcast or a show, they can break that into 60, 70, 100 pieces of content.
Right.
So the unintended consequence, as you may call it, is that, oh my gosh, it seemed like an hour's worth of time, but it broke into weeks or months worth of content for your team.
Yes.
So if you're not involved, you're going to be relying on your team to generate those ideas, which I think would take more time and more resources, and is probably less on brand and on point than if you were involved.
Well, and we're talking with Tim Santoni. We have Santoni Investigations, specifically about his commitment to really a presence on the social channels with content education, which I think is admirable. I'm a big fan of it. It's why I do the radio show. I've done it for 12 years. So my question for you is, isn't it valuable that you are establishing your brand by virtue of the work that you've done? Like you said, people come up to you and say, "I've seen your videos, Tim." They feel like they might know you, right? That might be a little bit, different.
Right. It's interesting, and also too, it leads to other opportunities that you wouldn't expect. So, speaking engagements are something that are important for me, and I've gotten those just from the fact of generating content, because people see you and they come and they're like, "Oh, I can see what you talk about. Will you come and talk to my groups?"
Yeah, you look good in front of the camera,
and you act like you know what you're talking about. You're not, you don't have an eyeball coming out the side of your head, whatever.
Right.
That helps. You're front and center. You're getting feedback, and the visibility is super important. And it's, at the end of the day, it's free distribution, right? It's there. And
it's evergreen, right? I mean, you never know. So, final question, then we'll move on. We've sat on this a long time, but I'm really impressed with the work that you do, and I'm hoping you'll help to inspire my audience to consider this strategy as well. How long did it take you personally to find your voice, if you know what I mean by that? I'm sure you do. Yeah,
so it's a great question. So I think that's the biggest challenge as you go through the process is, am I equipped to do this? Am I really an expert? What is my voice? How am I going to come across? How am I going to sound? And I would say that it comes about through active practice, and I think that takes time.
Right.
For me, it was probably a year or two to really feel comfortable in that regard, to really embrace it. And it takes practice. Some people are quicker at it, and some people maybe have been a reporter or done other things, and it comes naturally. But for me, it took practice and it took some time.
And a willingness to watch yourself, I have to believe. If you don't watch what you've produced, how do you get better, right? I know it's uncomfortable sometimes for people to sit and watch themselves for whatever reason, but I think it's a best practice to you criticize and look at and get feedback on how you could be better.
Yeah, and there's a ton of courses and things that I've done and taken that talk about what your content should look like and feel like, and how to present and how to talk and how to use a teleprompter and different tools that you can use to get there. And it's painful sometimes to watch, but it's one foot in front of the other. You're going to get better with each time, and you're going to look back. Everyone's going to look back at their first show, video, podcast, and be like, oh my gosh, that was horrible.
Right. But if I listened to the first interview I did, oh my God. Well, first of all, I had a terrible guest. No, I'm just kidding. Is the engineer or the owner of the station follow up? So I'm just kidding. You were great. Can you share with us and our audience where you go to get outside perspectives and kind of insights on the challenges that you still face in your firm?
Yeah, so I'm pretty a proponent. I've been doing Vistage, CEO Small Business Group, for about going on 10 years now, and been consistent with that. And that's really where I go to bounce ideas, process issues, and get some context from other business owners who are dealing with the similar thing, and be vulnerable and get the feedback and support that I think that CEOs and business owners need. And that's been a great resource and a great experience for me.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. My guiding principle, I believe that the CEO, the boss, has a huge impact on the culture of the companies that are on my program and in my community. I'm wondering if you could share your core philosophy, kind of what we call the guiding principles for how you're leading and growing and building the culture of your company, Tim.
Yeah, so I would say that what you mentioned is accurate, right? Your team and your clients are attracted and led by the CEO's message. And culturally speaking, I think that what we really pride ourselves on is doing the right thing for the client at the right time. We don't take on all clients. We don't take on all projects. It has to be the right thing. And we really focus, I would say that the guiding principle is really compliance. And I don't say compliance that could be compliance with the law, compliance with practices, but really compliance in generally with the framework of kind of ethically and morally doing the right thing. We don't take on oddball cases that could go the wrong way, and nor does our team. And so our team is very aware of those kind of parameters and what they are. And that's really helped us to stay down the straight and narrow and attract and retain and build trust with clients, because good news travels fast.
Sure.
And in the service business, when someone gets rid of you, you don't know about it. You find out about it a long time later, and not always why. So really, it's adherence and compliance with those moral and ethical things that drive. A lot of our stuff is legal driven. There's tons of compliance, and so I think that for us, that's kind of the guiding principle, and that's kind of where I stand, and my views, and those have kind of been adopted down through the organization as over time.
Great. Next to last question. I'd like to have you back on the show in a couple of years. Where will Santoni Investigations be? Where's your plan? Where are you taking the company?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I'd love to come back on and share where I've been and what's happened. But I think that for us, at the core of us, we're investigators in our DNA. Attention to detail, unearthing things and finding things. But I think that in the next few years, you're going to see a transformation of technology is going to have a bigger and bigger impact in what we do. I think with privatization of information, that we're going to be more restricted in what we can do. I think there'll still be a need for investigative services, but you're going to see things like removal of people's information from people finder sites, and a lot more technology that's moving data from one place to the other. I think that you're going to see background screening becoming really a bigger part of what we do, and I think that that's probably going to, within the next year or two, that'll probably become our core business, background screening, and using technology and integrations to move that data through with less touch points a lot more quickly. And I think that we're also going to see, we're doing a little bit of it now, but I think you're going to see a lot more of computer-related forensics because of smartphones and electronically stored information. The evidence and information that we used to uncover sat in courthouses and in paper, and now it sits on devices. And so there's a continuing need and ever-growing need for forensic evaluation, review, and technology around that. So I just see us moving more towards almost a technology sales company than with an investigation DNA.
Excellent. Thank you for that. That was very compelling. If someone would like to learn more about Santoni Investigations, how do they find you?
It's great. You can go to santoniservices.com. All of our information is there. If you want to connect with me, you can go to timsantoni.com and be happy to connect.
How do you spell Santoni?
It's S-A-N like Nancy, T-O-N-I.
Well, thank you for being a friend of the program. I'm excited to have you on for some time. I'm impressed with what you're doing, both as a service and how you're doing it. So thank you for giving me your time to share with our audience.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Tim. I'd also like to thank the engineer and the station owner, Paul Roberts, as well as our 3 producers without whom we could not do this show each and every week. They are Joan Park, Crystal Nunley, our newest producer, Vanessa Holland. If you'd like to connect with me, let's start on LinkedIn. I'm Richard Franzi, spelled F as in Frank, R-A-N-Z-I. Until our next show, I hope all of your business decisions will move your company in a positive direction.